Well, it is 1 after 11, so I'm going to go ahead and get today's educational webinar. It is Payments Intelligence and Data Security for Innkeepers. And with us today is Wynn Salish. Wynn is the founder and principal of Casablanca Ventures and has over 45 years of experience in leisure industry development and operations. He founded Casablanca Ventures nearly 20 years ago as a credit card processing and cybersecurity, educational, and brokerage to rescue friends and associates from fast-talking processor salespeople claiming to offer savings, but leaving them with hidden high costs, confusing fees, and poor service. So I've heard Wynn speak before. He is just chock full of good information. So welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is informal. You can unmute yourself if you have a question. I take it, Wynn, you're okay with that, to have questions?
Absolutely.
Go. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So again, we're going to try and keep it to an hour, but as I said, Wynn always has lots of information. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wynn.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I appreciate taking the time out of your day to join us today. The slides that I'm going to be showing you are text heavy, which of course violates every possible rule of PowerPoint presentations, but I've designed it so that at the conclusion of the session, I will PDF this and send it to Rose, and she's welcome to disseminate it to all of you if you wish to have it for future reference. I'll be also sending out some additional information from the Secret Service and the FBI on data security, which you may find helpful. So anyway, with that said, let's dive into this thing. There we go. Okay. I started this company as an educational organization because the credit card processing business is so confusing and so complex, unnecessarily so in my view, but it is that way. And my operating ethos as a former innkeeper myself is to treat everyone the way I want to be treated. I got my degree at the School of Hotel Administration at Cornell University many decades ago, and on the front of the school is this plaque, this quote from Ellsworth M. Statler, considered to be the father of the hospitality industry in the United States. You know, life is service. The one who progresses is the one who gives his fellow men a little more, a little better service. And I bring a hotelier's view of customer service to the payment processing and data security world. So it's very personal, very concierge-like, and quite different than you find in most situations in this business. I'm doing this for about 20 years. We are A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. We've been A+ rated all that time. We've never varied from that. We offer a whole range of solutions related to credit card processing and data security, from technology to guidance and analysis and education and savings. And everything I do for you is free. So you never have to worry about it. I've spent over 50 years in the hospitality, payment processing, and cybersecurity worlds. I'm vice president of the HFTP in New York City, and I'm a partner with the Secret Service on their electronic crimes task force. And I have the CPP designation from the Electronic Transactions Association, which less than 1% of everyone in the payment has for some reason. So I'm quite proud of that, and it keeps me up to date on the latest and greatest and most frustrating parts of the payment world. The official partner, the processor that I use for all of my innkeepers, is a company called Mercantile Processing Inc. down in Delaware. It's a closely held company. I deal directly with the CEO. The founder is a former hotel man himself. So their customer service is unequaled. When you call them, they don't use a call center. You get right to the desk on the first ring, and they love helping people. In fact, they're so good, even though they're based in Delaware, the Maryland Bankers Association picked them as their official processor. So that speaks a little bit about how good their service is.
Excuse me, your voice is going in and out.
Oh, okay. How's this? Is better?
That's better, yeah.
Okay. I will sit very close to the computer. These are some of the affiliations that I have, and we can get back to that later if you want. So the business of hospitality is controlling costs. The most important part, especially now in the pandemic era. So it's important to partner with companies that provide really good service and outstanding and reputable cost control. And you got to protect yourself. Scams and fraud are on the rise. Hackers know that people are not paying attention to business during this pandemic. And so we've seen a market increase in digital attacks through phishing and other means to get your information, to get that of your employees and yourself and your in, and to use it in bad ways. And we will get into that. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about payment processing. We'll get through it very quickly. But the most important part, we're going to deal with chargebacks, how to prevent them. And then we're also going to spend quite a bit of time on how you personally can take steps that are very simple to protect your personal information, PII, personally identifiable information, from bad actors on the web. And you can spread that into protecting the data for your in as well. When a guest gives you a credit card, either over the web or in person, it's sent to the processor and then sent over the rails of the card brands, Visa, MasterCard, to the banks that issued the credit cards, which then send the processor and you an authorization code. At the end of the day, you take all of the accumulated transactions and as a batch, and you settle that batch. And basically that sends it all the way back through the system. And that tells the players that, okay, these are final. And to go ahead and put the charges on the guest's credit card statements and to start the funds transfer process from the issuing bank back through the system to you, so you get paid. Now, you've probably heard the word interchange. It actually has two different definitions. One is that process that I just described of exchanging transaction information between the various players. The second definition is that it is the name of the wholesale rate structure that has been put in place by the card brands, Visa, MasterCard, and so on. And 100% of interchange, first of all, it comprises about 85% of what you pay for your merchant account, but 100% of it is paid to the issuing bank, the bank that issues your guests' credit cards, to reimburse them for the cost of maintaining those credit card accounts and for issuing all the miles and points and maintaining security over the credit card processing accounts and everything else that they do when you call your bank and talk to them about your credit card account. So 100% of interchange goes to those banks. It's not negotiable by anybody. Not even Hilton or Marriott can change interchange. I'm going to get into that. This is a sample of an interchange chart. It's only one page of about 100. There are about 400 rates and fees on the interchange schedule. Each rate applies to a specific kind of credit card, Visa or MasterCard, debit or credit, a specific level of rewards that it carries, and various other qualifiers, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's coming over the web or phone, whether you're part of a particular industry like the lodging industry, which does have special rates if your processor has you set up properly for that, and various other qualifiers. There are three basic components to what you are paying for your merchant account. You're paying interchange, you're paying assessments, which go to the card brands. Years ago, Visa and MasterCard were actually associations of the banks that issued their brand of cards. Then they were sued for antitrust and they were forced to break up. And so they're separate companies now, competing with each other, publicly traded. But they turned around and said, wait a minute, if 100% of interchange goes to the issuing banks, what do we get to keep? That's when they added assessments and like the FANF fee, called the fixed acquirer network fee, and MasterCard's location fee. Basically, it's a few cents or 0.02 or 0.03% or $15 a year that they charge, basically a toll for using the Visa and MasterCard, Amex, and Discover rails to process your transactions. And then the third category is the markup that your processor adds, which is the only money they get. And that is where abuse can occur if you're not careful. One thing to be careful of, as I just said, there are 3 cost centers. One thing to be very careful of is any credit card, any point of sale system, like a reservation system, that forces you to use only one credit card processor and will not allow you to use any other. If that's the case, you're basically locking yourself in. And if that credit card processor starts abusing your trust and raising their rates unexpectedly, the only power you have to fight that is to throw the baby out with the bathwater and change the POS system as well as your processor, because they're interlocked. So if you want to give yourself at least a little bit of flexibility, look for point of sale systems, reservation systems that give you options. You may never need to use them, but at least you have them.
Wayne,
Yes.
this is Robin from Pheasant
Yes,
Field.
Robin.
Can you give some examples of the companies that do what you just say we shouldn't do?
Some point of sale companies only code to First Data and First Data Merchant Services only. Some companies only code to Square or Stripe or what we call payment facilitators, which I'll get into. If they code to gateways like Authorize.net, Shift4, the MPI gateway, various others, then the gateways can connect to many different processors usually. So there you have options. But if they are saying you have to use this processor, then that's a concern, because again, you're giving up flexibility and power and ceding your ability to control your costs to this solution.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, the processors segment of the fees, you'll see on your statement many of these. You won't see all of them on your statement, but you will see some of them. The thing to be aware of is that some of these are very justifiable, but some are not. For instance, EMV non-enablement. That is a completely bogus fee. Why? Because EMV, the name of the chips on your credit cards, EMV acceptance is not required by any law or regulation or anything, either from the payment industry or from governmental bodies. It's advisable to take chip cards if you're doing card present, obviously, but you don't have to, and there shouldn't be a penalty for that. Similarly, sometimes you will see a per item fee and a transaction fee. Those very often are duplicate fees. So you should be aware of that and try to negotiate that away. You also should be aware of what it takes to leave the account if you ever want to leave. Most contracts, and you do have to sign a contract even if they say you don't, just by starting to process through them, you will be effectively agreeing to some contract words, because Visa and MasterCard require you to agree to their rules. If the processor has a contract with you, which they all do, most of them are 3-year term contracts. If you leave early, they're going to charge you several $100s, and sometimes it can be more than that. Always question, what is that ETF, the early termination fee? For our clients, especially those who use Think reservations, we waive that for them so that they can leave us at any time, because our history with them is very good and we don't lose clients, but we don't charge an ETF. Okay. In terms of pricing, there are several different ways. There are about 3 basic ways to price an account: tiered, flat rate, or interchange plus. Interchange plus basically takes whatever interchange rates were triggered by the cards that were presented to you during a month and passes through that interchange, that wholesale cost, and then adds what the upcharge that was agreed upon with your processor for them. That is the most transparent, and if your processor is ethical, it is the most economical. And it's the method used by all of the big companies. Hilton, Marriott, Walmart, everybody. Tiered is basically taking the 400 odd rates and fees of interchange and putting them into 3 buckets. That's when you see on your statement words like qualified, mid-qualified, and non-qualified. That's a tiered statement. And those yield more profit to the processor. It gives you a simpler and easier to read statement, but the cost efficiency is not as good as with interchange plus pricing. The other rate is flat rate pricing, which sounds very good on the surface, but with interchange wholesale rates ranging from about 0.5% to over 3% for very high rewards cards, obviously the flat rates are going to be set high enough to cover the expensive cards if they're going to come through your system. That's why Square charges, I think, 2.79%. But if you are having guests that are using lower rewards cards or debit cards, not with PIN numbers, but just what we call check cards, those carry far lower rewards and their interchange rates are far lower. So you're grossly overpaying if you're paying a flat rate. So there are trade-offs. There's good and bad in everything. You have to decide what is right for you in your circumstance. The ad on the right side of the screen is an actual advertisement from a credit card processor that'll remain unnamed. And to look at it, it looks like they're going to be charging you, it says interchange rates as low as 0.05%. But then look at that little asterisk. That asterisk is explained down by the red arrow. And even on this screen here, you cannot read that. And when I put it up on my screen at a lecture in person at a convention, you still cannot read it. So I've translated it way over on the left. And basically, it turns out that it's only for certain kinds of debit transactions. It doesn't apply to everything, but it's a very misleading ad. So be very careful. If something seems too good to be true, as always, it probably is. Now, as I mentioned before, Square, Stripe, PayPal, Braintree, InPayment, Yapstone are all what we call aggregators or payment facilitators. They have one merchant account in their name and all of their clients just share in that, okay? They all have flat rates. Some have a secondary rate if it's a card not present transaction like over the web, but they're all up in that 2.79 or close to 3 or sometimes 3.5%. if it's a internet transaction. Excuse me. So you have to be very careful there. They're very sensitive because they have set their risk parameters, making certain assumptions about the kind of business that you will give them. And if you go outside of those parameters, let's say you take an unusually large transaction for a wedding, you could very easily find your account without warning suspended, closed, or the money held back by them for up to 6 months so that they can control the risk. So be aware, if you go on the web and you search for customer comments about any of these, you will inevitably see, in many cases, comments about how an account was shut down without warning or money was held back without warning. And that's why, because they went outside of the risk parameters that were set by Square and Stripe and PayPal and so on and so forth. So this is all very daunting and scary. So the best way to control your costs and to monitor your costs, rather than worry about each individual interchange rate or tiered rate, is just at the end of the month, take your total processing fees on your statement and divide them by your total volume that went through the account. That will give you an effective rate, okay? It'll probably be in the low 3% range, 3.5, depends on whether you got a lot of high cost cards that month or low cost cards. It'll be even higher if you had a dormant month, like you were closed for COVID, and those fixed rates that are on the merchant account really kick in then. If you track this effective rate a few months, you'll see a window within which the rate tends to float for your particular business. Then you just have to spot check every 6 months. And if you're within the window, you know your account's okay. If it's outside the window, then maybe further investigation is warranted. Always remember that your merchant account fees are an expense of doing business, so they are fully taxable, tax deductible. So your true processing cost ends up at the end of the day being half or less of that effective rate, depending on your tax bracket and all those other considerations. Chargebacks, the bane of our existence. Chargebacks fell like an avalanche on innkeepers last year as people canceled reservations right and left, and many inns had not set aside the deposits and had already spent the money and were unable to fund the refund request. So the cardholders went to their banks and challenged the charge of the deposit, saying, I'm not getting the service I was promised, or I'm not, all of this stuff. And the banks, of course, then pull the money back from you, send you a chargeback notice, and give you a chance to dispute it. But if they could not pull that money back by law, the credit card processing network is responsible to cover it. And so virtually every processor in the country, with a few exceptions, redesignated any business that takes advance payments, including lodging, as high risk. And most processors will not touch high risk accounts, period. So it's very hard right now for a new innkeeper to get a merchant account. There are a few. We are one that continues to set up accounts for merchants. We have multiple partnerships with MPI, and one of the partnerships is a company that was willing to accept innkeepers. And that's where we're placing all of the accounts now. There's no price differential. It's just that this is a good company that decided their risk metrics were such that they could afford to do this. So if I challenge a charge, and I call my bank, I call the issuer, they send the notice back to the acquirer, which sends it to you. The acquirer is the bank that acquired the transaction from you and then handles the distribution of funds. And then you're notified and given an opportunity, very short, to dispute the chargeback. Chargeback prevention can be done. First and foremost, make sure that your DBA name as listed on your merchant account is the name of your inn. If ABC Corp is the ownership of your inn, but the inn is the Hudson River or Manhattan, New York City bed and breakfast, make sure it says Manhattan, New York City bed and breakfast or B&B on as the DBA name, because that's the name that will appear on the customer's credit card statement. If they see a charge from ABC Inc., they won't recognize that. They will call their bank and say, I never made a charge with ABC Inc. Bingo, a chargeback starts. So make sure that not your legal name, but your DBA name is being shown on the cardholder statements. And if it's not, talk to your processor. Make sure that you fully disclose, in accordance with Visa regulations, on your website and by phone and at the front desk, if you have a front desk, all of your rules, all of your refund policies and your privacy policy. And if you have a room damage clause or pets or children or anything like that, think of how you want to be treated and treat your guests accordingly. And if you fully disclose everything and you use a click and accept box on your website, you can use that and submit it to in response to a chargeback notice saying, wait a minute, the guest saw this and they approved it, and they accepted it. And that will usually go a long way to protecting you, okay? But make sure you use the same script of, here is our cancellation policy, whether it's on the website or if they're calling you to reserve or walking up to the front door, okay? And manage the guest expectations before charging their cards. Tell them in advance when you're going to run the charge for the deposit or whatever. Remind them of what part is non-refundable. If you want to protect yourself from chargebacks, call the guest. If you have a 14-day advance notice, and if you cancel before 14 days, you get full refund. So more than 14 days out, give them a call, say, I'm just calling to tell you we're looking forward to your arrival. To see if there's anything special we can do for you. Are you celebrating an anniversary or a birthday? And oh, by the way, just wanted also to make sure that you are coming. And that gives them a chance outside of that restrictive window to let you know if they are not going to show up or if something changed in their world that would prevent them from showing up. And you can then refund the money to them or whatever your policy is, but they haven't unknowingly crossed the border into that portion, into those few days prior to arrival when they can no longer get a refund. Again, being upfront and fully disclosing and taking that extra step to be welcoming and cheerful and giving full disclosure will go a long way to preventing your chargebacks. Again, we talked about no-shows. No smoking. If somebody smokes in your room, make sure that you have your no smoking policies clearly presented everywhere. Maybe a little table tent in the room that's nicely designed. Maybe, definitely on the website, definitely in the script. If you're going to make the charge for that, call it room damage. Do not call it smoking, because smoking is hard to prove. Room damage is easier to prove. Okay. Record the name of the customer, the phone number, all the details of their stay. Capture the cardholder's name, billing address, card expiration date, and CVV code if you can, if your system allows for that. Just fully get all the information you possibly can and disclose as much as you possibly can. Put yourself in their shoes and think of all the things you would want to know before you reserved at an inn where maybe you've never been before. When you are going to respond to a chargeback, you only have a few days. So when you get that letter, and they will only mail it for some stupid reason, the industry does not send these things by email. You only have about 10 days, and that includes the mailing time to get to you. So you end up with only maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days. Don't put it on the to-do stack. Deal with it the day it arrives so that you make sure you beat the deadline. Because if you lose the deadline, there's no dispute. You've lost it. In our case, we provide chargeback assistance at no cost to our clients, and I'm sure many other processors do as well. But maintain a full record. Keep receipts if you have them, and just keep all the details of a stay. And if a guest was problematic when they were there, make a diary entry so that you can go back to that and provide, well, on such and such a day, we spoke to the guest and they agreed to this, or they complained about this and we responded this way. And you can put that in a narrative that you send as a chargeback response. And that will go a long way to helping you. Okay, you're not going to win every deal, every chargeback. Trust me. Because many times the card brands tend to come down on the side of the cardholder, especially in American Express. But you do have a chance. You definitely have a chance. And it's worth trying. Surcharging. I've been getting questions about surcharging. Currently, most states allow it in some way, shape, or form. There are limitations. There are a lot of rules governing surcharges by Visa and MasterCard about what you need to disclose with signage on your site, on your front door, at the point of sale, everywhere. And there are limitations, and you have to notify the card brands in writing before you do it. And it alienates customers. It's also taxable. So you don't get to keep the full surcharge anyway. Compliance is extremely difficult. It's a catch-22. And it's just, I don't recommend it because I don't think it's hospitable. I think the easier way to cover your payment processing cost is the next time you increase your room rate, just include a 3% bump, add an additional 3%. And you will be getting the processing costs from every guest, even if they don't use a credit card, and you'll more than cover your processing fees. And it's perfectly legal. It doesn't need to be itemized or anything else. Just if you're going to increase your room rate by $100, instead increase them by $103, for instance. and you'll cover everything. So that's the easiest way, and it doesn't cause guest aggravation. It doesn't cause pushback from any guests, and you know that you're in full compliance with local laws, state laws, federal, and Visa, MasterCard regulations. By the way, when I mentioned Visa, it's the largest card brand, so they tend to set the tone for all of the other card brands in setting up the rules. And one of the documents I will send to Rose is Visa's rules for the lodging industry. So please take a look at it. One of their rules, just so you know, is that in the case of a penalty fee, like if I don't show up, you're technically only allowed to charge one night stay. And if you charge more, if a guest picks up on that and challenges that, you will lose the chargeback without question, without dispute. So your next question will be, well, why are so many hotels charging more? And that's because they're betting, they're gambling, that the number of guests who challenge that multiple night charge will be fewer than those who don't. And obviously the industry is winning that challenge because, or that gamble, because they keep on charging 2, 3, 4 nights penalty. So take that under advisement. Just be aware that if you do charge more than one night, you're slightly at risk for losing the chargeback if it ends up as a chargeback. And the reason given is that you're charging more than one night. Many guests will just say, yeah, I owe it, and accept it. But some will charge it, will challenge it. Select Registry, if you're a member of that organization, they have gift cards, electronic gift cards. If you have some sort of gift certificate or gift card, they're very popular. In most states, you get to keep the money. Some states have escheatment laws where after X number of years, 5, 10 years, you have to send the money to the state treasury, which is ostensibly to give it back to the cardholder. But since it's a gift card, they don't know who owns the cards anyway. So it's basically found money for the state. But gift cards are a very valuable way to promote your inn, to build loyalty amongst your guests, and to reward them for their business. In fact, and they can add a lot to your bottom line. If you sell $50 cards and you sell 500 a year, now that's a lot, obviously. Excuse me. Most customers spend 20% more than the value of the cards. So your revenue at the first year is $30,000. And assuming 1.25% of the cards are never redeemed, which is the average nationwide, and let's say to create custom design cards might cost $765, and let's say your gift card provider charges you a fee, you're still coming out way ahead. Tens of thousands of dollars of found profit. So gift cards are something to consider. And they're givable for obviously all these things. If local charities come to you to donate something, donate a gift card with some value on it. If nobody uses it, you got them, you're not out any money except for the physical cost of the card. And rewards programs can be built into most gift cards these days. Okay, so let's jump over to data security, which is a bloody nightmare these days. It sort of feels like playing whack-a-mole in many respects, because as soon as you solve one thing, another thing pops up. This has been on the rise. Threats have been on the rise during COVID exponentially all over the world, from spam, from malware that's attached to emails that you open an attachment and suddenly your computer starts misbehaving, to phishing attempts where they try to get you to give them their information, give them your personal information by posing as PayPal, saying that your account's going to be closed down unless you click here and verify your information, things like that. It's on the rise. You really need to be aware and very cautious. So the basic ways that they attack you are through phishing, through malware, which is basically poisoned applications that attach to your computer. And they create new domain names that entice you to click on them. They imply trust, but they're not trustworthy. And of course, with all the remote access and telenetworking that people are doing these days, many times if you have that remote desktop, if it's not well password protected, with really good passwords, or if you leave it open when you're not using it overnight. And if your computer is not protected, a hacker could get in that way. Okay. Now, if you think you're too small to be effective, think again. Almost half of all cyber attacks target you, small businesses. And 2/3 of small businesses that get hacked go out of business within 6 months because of the fees and penalties and fines that come down on top of you like an avalanche from Visa and MasterCard, the banks, the issuing banks, the government, and many other sources, and law enforcement, and lawsuits from affected cardholders. I'll show you a lot of the expenses right away. They can get in through any portal to your business, any outside firm that has access to your computer system, they can get in. One thing you should do is if you offer your guests Wi-Fi, you should have a partitioned server or a separate server, a separate Wi-Fi channel for your guests, as opposed to for your management, your administrative purposes. Because if a guest decides to download a pornography, go onto a porn site, and they could very easily infect their computer. But if they're using your master Wi-Fi system, it will travel through the Wi-Fi system to your other computers, okay? Also, if you have a Ring doorbell or any digital voice assistant from Siri, yeah, or I forget the names of the ones that you have in your house, they are listening all the time. Make sure that you change the password from the one that comes with the product from the factory, because that password is publicized on the web in the PDF operating manuals that you can download for that device. And the hackers know this. So make sure you're using customized passwords. You watch what you connect to your system. Delete commands that you don't need to use. Be careful what you share. Turn off the microphone if you can. And turn off purchasing ability if you can. And watch your notification emails. And check your spam folders periodically to see if you're getting notifications of unusual traffic on your website or on your account. When you go to the gas pump, this is a typical looking gas pump, slightly dirty. If you look above the gallons and above the price at that bar, you see that little pinhole above the word sale? That's a camera. That is photographing the keypad as you enter your PIN number if you use a debit card. So that's one reason, as I will tell you later, never to use debit cards for anything other than ATM withdrawals. But just be aware that they are sneaky and they can hide it that carefully. And it connects via a circuit board that they implant and sends out a signal via Wi-Fi to the hacker's computer somewhere nearby. And they're collecting out all the credit card information from that you swipe in and that you key in. Everything that's usable by somebody that gets them in somewhere is at risk. Account data, customer data, corporate data, everything. These are some stats. It's actually scary how many breaches occur. Now, what's the value of all this stuff? Why would people steal this stuff? Well, when you do a search on the web, you on Bing or Google or whatever, you can only see about 4% of the entire web, all the pages on the web. The rest are hidden in the deep web, like an iceberg. And the deep web was created by the United States Navy. It's a legitimate entity where they created it to put their ship movements and allow their secret operatives to talk to each other securely, things like that. And it's currently used for academic databases, medical records, financial records, so on and so forth. But down at the bottom is the dark web. And that's where all of the credit card illegal activities, the drug trafficking, the weapons sales, and other things occur. You can access that by using Tor, which is a legal gateway. It's called the Onion Router. It's a browser actually, and it anonymizes your search, meaning it bounces your search through many servers all over the world, so it can't be traced back to you. And that's what the hackers use. If you download the browser Tor, you can search for credit card account numbers, and most of them are password protected, but some are not, and you will be frightened at what you see in the dark web. For instance, these are prices that are being paid for various services, for murder, for crippling, rape, bombing, beatings, Social Security numbers, $1 a piece, Facebook account login information, $1 for an account with 15 friends, medical records, $50 and up, credit card data, depending on the available balance on the card, anywhere from 25 cents a record to $60 a record. That's how valuable they are. These are actual photos of web pages on the dark web. They're called credit card dumps, where they're offering whole batches of credit card information to be stolen. It's so easy. For $12.99, you can actually get a program that will train you how to hack. And it's readily available on the web. If your computer is infected, you may open up your computer one day and find a screen like this or something similar that basically says everything on your computer is now encrypted. That's called ransomware, because they want you to pay in Bitcoin to get your files unencrypted. Believe it or not, they're pretty reputable. They will, if you pay the money, you will get your files in most cases. But it's best to not pay them, and instead to use a backup system for your computer where you're backing up your files regularly in versions and off-site, so that if you are hacked and you do get this, you can completely wipe your hard drive, which will get rid of this, and then go to your backup file and find the most recent version that was not corrupted, and then download that again. It's a real pain, but that's the best way to do this. But they're very polite, these hackers. They give you full instructions on how to get Bitcoins, and it's very weird because they know, and they don't charge you exorbitant sums because they want to keep it manageable. Otherwise, people won't pay. And so it's very strange. So in the last 12 months, 22% of organizations had to cease business operations immediately because of ransomware. 81% of businesses have experienced a cyber attack, which means the odds are you will too at some point. 2/3 have suffered a data breach, and 1/3 were victims of the ransomware. And it can happen in 3 seconds. You click on something and bang, you've downloaded the malware, which then will be triggered at some point to encrypt your system. It is very scary. The Target breach occurred because the hackers discovered that Target uses the same HVAC company for all of its stores, and every night the HVAC computer dials into every store to make sure that the temperatures are working properly. And so they sent a phishing email to the HVAC contractor's employees saying, open this email and see this cat do this trick. And a whole bunch of the emails were opened very quickly within the first hour. And when they did that, the malware was downloaded. And that night, the malware swam upstream like a bug and infected all of the store computers. And then the hackers went in and looked around. They found a folder in each store computer labeled POS. They put in another piece of malware. And from that point forward, they were collecting every single credit card number that was either swiped or key entered, every PIN number. And as with most cases, retailers don't notice this for months and months and months. Eventually, 70 million account numbers were stolen. And it cost Target hundreds of millions of dollars. But the value to the hackers was also hundreds of millions of dollars. So you can see that there is motivation for them to do this. Equifax, if you remember that breach, they got hacked because they didn't download the latest security patch that Microsoft sent out every Tuesday, or almost every Tuesday. Microsoft sends out security patches for you to download, and you should set your computer to do it automatically. And they didn't do that. So the vulnerability was there. The hackers knew that, and they went in and they grabbed everything. Marriott, if you recall, they also were hacked. And again, they didn't control their security patches and their password systems, and they didn't warn their employees about phishing attempts. So phishing attempts, I mean, it's something, if you're part of a big company, many employees there get an email that looks like it's from the CFO asking for the social security number of this employee or this group of employees, because I have to do some reports. And if you don't check it and verify with the CFO that this is a real email, did you really send this? You could be sending out and exposing all that information. And even in a small organization, be careful of who you respond to. If it looks like a weird request, call them and verify it. As I said before, it takes a long time to discover a breach. Most companies takes that long, just under a year, to discover that they've been breached. During that time, a lot of information can be stolen. And now it's costing about $170 a record that's stolen. And 76% of people say that they would not do business with a company that was revealed to have a breach. So in your business, if you have 10 rooms and the average stay is 2 nights, and let's say you didn't notice the breach for 3 years, which is very common, and if the cost per record is $170, when the breach is detected, you're going to be at risk for probably about $1 million in fines. And if you have just 50% more rooms, that amount doubles. So it is very important to be PCI compliant, because PCI is the operative system to guide you in trying to be as protected as you possibly can. There's no 100%, but it is good information. This is from an insurance company. And these are some cost ranges for all of the expenses that will hit you if you are determined to be the source of a breach. And as you can see, the costs really, really mount up. So what should you do? Every insurance company today offers cyber liability insurance. It is not expensive at all. You should talk to your insurance company and make sure you have this on your insurance policy for your inn. It's really important, and it will help protect you. They know how much to give you based upon the volume of business that you do and the circumstances of your inn, how you operate, and so on and so forth. So talk to your insurance agent to reconfirm that you do have this protection, and if you don't, get it added as soon as you can, okay? I don't sell it. I don't have any recommendations as to companies that offer it. I have no vested interest in this. I'm just telling you, for your own peace of mind and personal security, make sure you're covered. One of the best ways, or one of the biggest ways hackers get in, is they know that you're using bad passwords, okay? Look at these passwords. These are 50 of the most popular passwords. And I will wager that one of you sees at least one of your passwords on here. And the hackers know this. The hackers know this. 73% of people use the same password from multiple sites. And 32% of people save passwords and other login information on a cell phone. Now, one solution, as this guy put it, is I changed all my passwords to incorrect, so whenever I forget it, the system will tell me your password is incorrect. Okay, that might work. Another solution that I like is just take a sledgehammer to the darn system and be done with it. But reasonably, there are ways to protect yourself. For instance, if you take a word like troubadour and you do what I call corrupt it with numbers and symbols like on here. At 1,000 guesses a second, it would take a computer 3 days to crack that. But if you just take 4 words and squeeze them together without spaces, so it creates another word that's not searchable in any dictionary, that would take 550 years to crack at that same rate. This is the system, the method that I'm recommending these days, and the FBI is recommending these days. Just take a few words, unrelated words, and squish them together. And if you want extra, put a number or a symbol in there, and that will protect you. But make sure you don't reuse it on other websites. Okay, especially for sensitive information sites like financial websites. I mean, magazine subscription websites, who cares? You're not putting any particular information on there. You're just logging in to see an article on the New York Times. It doesn't matter. But any site where you enter personal information, make sure you're using a complex password like this and a different one for every site. And you periodically change them. And here's a chart that you can read in your spare time, shows that the length of the password directly impacts how long it would take to crack. And you can see how fast the amount of time rises the more complex you make the password. How do I store all these stupid passwords? It's very simple. Get a password manager app. They're readily available on the web. Some are free, some cost a little bit of money. They encrypt your passwords to Defense Department standards. And you can, most of them sync between your cell phone and your desktop, so you can keep them on both. And many of them will actually identify the website that you're on and populate the information there so that you can just click and log in. There are, if you go to this website on the bottom here, it'll give you a chart of various password manager solutions that are out there and the costs and the features that each one offers. And so you can pick one that suits you the best. But that's the best way. You can put everything from your passwords to your credit card numbers, to your passport numbers, to your birth dates. You can store everything in it. And it's all very, very highly protected. The one thing is that the complex password that you set up for the password manager app, don't ever lose that, because they're not recording it and they can't rebuild it. So if you lose that, you're dead in the water. Okay. Never use the same password twice, and no, Poodle 3 and Poodle 4 are not different passwords. Use long, randomly generated passwords, at least 8 characters long. Don't use personal information or your children's name in the password. Keyboard patterns like QWERTY, the top row of keys on a keyboard. Don't tell your password to people, and don't put it on stickers on your desk. Store them securely, change them at least annually, especially on the websites you need to be secure. And just, take it seriously, because the hackers know these, and they have algorithms on their computers that can do thousands and thousands of password combinations a second to try to crack yours. So you want to make it as long as possible and as complex as you can. Your mobile devices, make sure that they're password protected. Use biometric password, your thumbprint or your face. If a website offers 2-factor authentication where they text you after you try to log in, that's great, because that is a double check to make sure that you're you. Phishing accounts, make sure you don't open links. The links can look a lot like a legitimate link. They can look like Citibank.com. But if you don't notice carefully that one of the I's in Citibank is actually a lowercase l, which makes it a completely different URL, you could be clicking on it and giving them bad information, giving them your personal information that they would steal. If you get a notice from any financial service or sensitive location, PayPal, Chase, whatever, close out the email, go to your browser and log in to the website using the login you normally use. Don't use the link in the email. And then see if there's something problematic with the account, or give them a call. But do not click on links in emails. cautious, be wary, trust your red light, trust your gut. If something seems odd, start looking at it carefully. Usually these phishing emails come from foreign sources, so the grammar will be wrong, or the spelling will be off, or the syntax or the punctuation will be wrong. If you see things like that, that's a dead giveaway that it's a suspicious email. One of the last things I want to tell you is, if you haven't done so already, please go to Equifax and Experian and TransUnion and freeze, not lock, your credit reports. Okay? It's free under federal law. And if you do that, nobody can get your credit report to use to open up a mortgage or a loan or anything else. Okay? They will get, at the time that you freeze it, they will give you a PIN number, which you should store somewhere in case you need to unfreeze it, because if you're going to go apply for a credit card, you're going to have to unfreeze your accounts so that they can look at your reports, and then you'll want to refreeze them. Okay? The only inconvenience is if you're one of these people who goes to Macy's and falls for their, well, you'll save 20% if you open a credit card today. You can't do that because you haven't unfrozen your reports. But but the good side is it gives you some self-discipline, and also you're protecting your records, which is far more important than getting a 20% discount. Go home, open up the card, open up your freeze, and then go back to Macy's and then apply for the card, and then you can get your 20%. Now, criminals can still use stolen information like Social Security numbers to file tax returns. So that's why they tell you to file as early as you possibly can. They can make bogus medical claims on your insurance. So that's why you should be checking your insurance reports periodically to make sure there's no procedures or office visits that you don't recognize on there. And occasionally request a full copy of your complete medical history file, so you have a benchmark as to, as of this date, I know it was good, it was accurate. As I said before, use debit cards for bank ATM purchases, bank ATM cash withdrawals only, nothing more. Your protections, as a consumer, are much weaker on debit cards than they are for credit cards. If your debit card is stolen or the number is compromised, they'll empty your checking account. All your checks will start bouncing, and the bank will take weeks to reimburse you, literally. Whereas if a credit card is compromised, you call the credit card issuer and they immediately refund your money and they send you a new card. So, and plus that, you're getting miles and points on the credit cards. So if you're one of these people who uses a debit card because they don't want finance fees, take one of your credit cards, log in, and set it up for automatic payment of the statement amount. And it will, and just make sure that you prepare for that in your checking account. But every month it'll automatically pull the statement, the bottom line, and pay that off, and then you'll never incur any financing charges, and you'll still be using credit cards for all of your purchasing, getting their miles and points and the enhanced consumer protections. Okay. Also, only use bank ATMs. Don't use bodega ATMs or any freestanding ATMs, because they can be hacked. They can be victims of putting false fronts on, false keyboards that will actually record your information, or false sliders that you insert your card and there's a chip inside that will collect your card information, as well as passing it through to the bank. But meanwhile, the hacker's getting your information as well. So be very careful about using debit cards. Once a year, by federal law, you're allowed to see your credit report from each agency for free. This is the only website you can do that on, annualcreditreport.com. I do one every 4 months. That way, over the course of the year, I see every credit report. Okay. Be careful of what stickers you put on your cards. This can tell people very secretive information about you. The names of your kids and where you live and work and things like that. Hackers can use all this information against you to either set up a robbery of your home or to do all sorts of other nasty things. So a checklist. Back up your system online and offline regularly and securely. Secure your home network with strong passwords, especially your router. Make sure you're not using the password that came with the system. Keep your software updated. Manage your social media profiles. Don't disclose too much information like your birth date if you can avoid it. People don't need to know this stuff. And yeah, so they'll send you birthday greetings. Who cares? Most of them don't mean it anyway, because They only do it because Facebook reminded them it was your birthday. Those people who are your true friends will know it anyway, that's your birthday. Check your privacy and security settings. Make sure you keep your systems updated with the latest security patches and software versions. When QuickBooks issues a new version, yes, they're more bells and whistles, but also they're doing it because it's patching security flaws that they found. So keep your systems up to date constantly.
And we're at, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're at noon. So it looks
is
like
about-
this might be your last slide here.
It is. It just about is. Yep. So again, breach insurance, layered security. Be careful of phishing. Use a trusted advisor who knows credit card processing and data security and is willing to give you the best advice. And I do this because I'm creating friendships, or I want to create friendships, and just as in my favorite movie, Casablanca. So thank you for watching.
Do we have any questions for Win?
Is anybody awake at this point?
Joan, any questions? Robin? Okay.
No, I don't have any questions. It's just, the doomsday feel of some of the portion of the presentation. I get it. I used to work in that industry too, and it's
Did you?
absolutely right.
Okay.
It's out there, and it happens every day to thousands of people. So
Yeah, I've set this up to be a wake-up call because so many people take this so casually and they just don't realize. And so I'm trying to shake them out of their lethargy so they can protect themselves. And so, yeah.
In your processing, you charge, is there a minimum, like a 3-year or?
Well, as I said, all processors have to use contracts, whether you physically sign it or whether just by using the account you agree to it. For our innkeepers, we do not charge ETFs. So if you decide to leave us, obviously I'll do everything I possibly can to make you happy. And very few, I can't remember the last time somebody left us because of a dispute. If you do leave us, we'll shake hands and wish you the best, and that's it. There's no cost.
Yeah, I guess, and that's the phone number if I decide to talk to you.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I'll be
you're-
happy to do
And
an analysis.
where are you from?
I'm in New York City.
New York City.
I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I was born in Youngstown, Ohio,
Uh-huh.
but I grew up around New York here. And basically, I'm about 10 blocks from Columbia University, and I've spent the past year hiding under my bed.
Okay.
Okay. So Harry, no questions. I will, there was a lot of information in here. It's being recorded, so I will send everybody the link. It'll be posted on the PABI website as well, too.
Right.
When
And I'll PDF this and send this to you, Rose. You're welcome to disseminate it as you wish. And
Yes.
I'll include other attachments like the Visa innkeeping rules that you can also spread out. Okay.
Yes, and that will, I will send that out to the people who had registered for the webinar. So that would be.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. I don't know if Phil is trying to ask a question or not. Phil, you can unmute yourself. Well,
Yeah, I have one question.
okay,
Yeah.
Like I usually have a 2-night minimum on a weekend, but or there's a surcharge. I charge like a $50 surcharge. Like the room is $95, and I charge a $50 surcharge. That is legal, isn't it?
Surcharge for what?
For the room, because they're only taking 1 night instead of 2 nights.
Oh, no, that's a room surcharge. That's not real. You're not using that for credit card processing
Oh, okay. It's only for credit card processing. I see.
right.
Yeah, I know. I don't charge for. I try not to take credit cards. I take check or cash.
Okay. But that, there are inns around the country that works well for. It all depends on the clientele that you deal with.
Yeah, and then I was using Square.
Okay.
I have to.
Okay. Well, Square again, just be aware that nice flat rate they offer comes with some downsides.
Yeah, but there's no contract, and I could leave. I could leave. I don't have to use them. There's no contract.
Right. That's same. And But again, technically there is a contract, but you're just not seeing it because you have to agree to obey all of Visa's rules. So just by using their system, if you read the fine print on their website, once you start using their system, you are de facto agreeing to all of the rules, regs.
Well, you have to do that with anybody,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So so it's sort of a misnomer to think that there's no contract. There is, but it's just a different type.
Hey, when we have a question from Phil, his question is about, I understand PCI compliance is with Square. Is that true?
PCI compliance, because the merchant account is owned by Square and not by Phil, Square needs to do all the stuff. The individual merchant clients of theirs don't need to do that, although you definitely need to worry about protecting your data and everything that PCI is about, because it could come back to bite you anyway. It's just a little bit less administrative work.
Okay.
But again, then you're overpaying with Square because they charge a high enough fee to, Square has never made a dime of profit. They have lost money every year since they've been in existence. And that's because the 279 rate is now below what the major credit cards charge for the titanium and platinum cards. But if you have clients that are using lower cost cards, you're overpaying with Square.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Win? Okay, he's have his number, you have his email. You're welcome to contact him directly if you have questions or you want to talk more into your own specific needs. So with that, thank you everybody for joining today's webinar. Win, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
All right,
Thank you for the
everybody have a
opportunity.
good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.